The sun was just beginning to rise over the empty hills of Elmridge when a strange, eerie sound echoed through the still morning air. It wasn't the chirp of birds or the rustle of wind. It was a cry, faint, weak, a sound full of pain and confusion. Down a broken dirt road, past an old farmhouse that hadn't seen love in years, something moved behind a rusted metal gate. It was her. Her name was Mira, a young German shepherd. Skin clung to her bones. Her ribs showed with every shallow breath. But her eyes still carried fire, a mother's fire. And right above her, barely alive, hung her two tiny puppies, suspended by a tangle of wire and cloth someone had twisted around their little bodies. They didn't bark. They didn't whimper. They only twitched, caught between life and death. Mira had been tied to a post nearby. Her leash was chewed halfway through. Blood smeared the rope where her mouth had worked for hours, maybe days. Her paws were raw. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. But her eyes never left her babies. Not once. Across the road, a truck passed by. The driver glanced for a second, then kept going. Another hour passed. The sun climbed higher, and Mira stopped chewing. Her strength had drained. Her head dropped. Her tail didn't move. But then, a low sound. Gravel shifting. Footsteps. Not the usual kind. These were soft, careful, slow. Mira lifted her head. Barely. Her vision was blurry. But she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Eyes. Human eyes. Filled with concern. A woman stepped forward, slowly, like approaching a wild deer. Her name was Callie. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She just stared at the pups. Then at Mira. And then she whispered, "Oh God! What happened to you?" Mira didn't growl. Didn't move. Just blinked once. That moment changed everything. But before this, before the gate, before the rope and the blood, Mira was someone else. Her life had once been full of joy, of wagging tails and warm fires. So what happened? How did she go from a loved companion to this? That story, her real story, begins months earlier, in a different place with a different name. Let me take you back. Before we continue, tell us, what part of the world are you in right now? Drop your country in the comments. And if your heart paused for even a second, show your support with a like and a subscribe. Let's carry this feeling forward. Before she was Mira, she was known as Daisy. She lived in a small town called Willow Creek, tucked between lakes and meadows where children played barefoot and families gathered for summer barbecues. Daisy belonged to a boy named Eli. He was 10, with freckles, messy hair, and the gentlest hands you could imagine. She'd been his birthday gift, wrapped in a blue ribbon with paws too big for her tiny body. From the moment they met, they were inseparable. Daisy followed Eli everywhere, to school bus stops, to the woods, to his grandparents' farm. At night, she'd curl at his feet, her heartbeat matching his. They talked without words. She could sense when he was sad or scared, or when the bullies at school had been cruel. And every time, she would nudge her head under his arm until he smiled again. Eli's parents weren't perfect. His dad worked too much and spoke too little. His mom cried in the laundry room when no one was looking. But Daisy kept the cracks from spreading. When Eli felt alone, she reminded him he wasn't. The happiest moment came during the spring of Eli's 12th year, when Daisy had her first litter. 7 puppies, all healthy, all perfect. Eli sat beside her the whole night, whispering, "You're doing amazing, girl," with tears in his eyes. He named every single pup, even the runt that barely made a sound. But good days have a cruel habit of slipping away. One morning, Eli didn't come down for breakfast. His mom found him still in bed, pale, weak, unable to lift his head. The diagnosis came fast. Leukemia. Aggressive. Daisy knew something was wrong before anyone said a word. She paced the house, barked at closed doors, refused to eat. When Eli came home from the hospital, frail and quiet, she never left his side. She guarded his bed, licked his hand when he trembled, rested her head on his chest during the worst nights. But the day came when he didn't wake up. And Daisy, she broke. The house felt like a stranger's. Eli's scent faded. The toys were gone. The laughter never returned. His mom stopped looking Daisy in the eyes. His dad didn't come home as often. One morning, they loaded the remaining pups into boxes. Daisy barked until her throat went dry, but no one listened. One by one, they were driven away. She tried to stay strong, but her spirit dimmed. The family moved. Daisy was left behind. Not to a shelter, not to a new home, just behind. An old neighbor tried to feed her, but she refused. Rain soaked her fur. Cold nights stiffened her limbs. She wandered, thin and dazed, looking for Eli, smelling for him, hoping somehow he'd come back. Months passed. Hunger turned to pain, and when her body couldn't go farther, she collapsed by a quiet gate behind an abandoned barn. She laid there, eyes half shut, until she felt something inside her shift again. New life. She was pregnant. No home, no warmth, no Eli, but life was growing. And for the first time since she'd lost him, she had a reason to survive. She found shelter beneath the broken wood, gave birth to 2 tiny pups. She licked them clean, pulled them close, whispered to them in silence. She didn't name them. She couldn't. Names meant hope. She didn't know if she had that left. But she fed them, fought for them. Every scrap of energy she had went to keeping them warm, keeping them hidden. Then, one morning, she returned from a desperate food search, and they were gone. She searched frantically, sniffing, crying, digging in the dirt. She howled louder than she ever had, until she spotted them, barely moving, tied by someone's cruel hands, hung over the old gate like forgotten rags. Her leash was back. Someone had found her, tied her down again, like she was nothing. But this time she wasn't alone. She was a mother again, and she would fight. Every day she gnawed the rope, ignored the bleeding, ignored the hunger. She barked for help, but no one came, until that moment when Callie appeared. And now, standing on the edge of life and death, something deep inside her whispered, "This isn't the end." Not yet. Callie didn't plan to be there that morning. Her car had broken down 5 miles back, and she'd been walking, hoping to catch a signal or find someone who could help. But what she found instead was a kind of heartbreak she never imagined. She stood frozen, staring at the gate. The sight was unbearable. 2 fragile pups dangling by twisted cloth and wire, limp and silent. The mother, weak and trembling, lay tethered nearby, her eyes hollow but locked onto Callie's like she had been waiting for this exact moment. Callie's breath caught in her throat. She moved fast, ran to the gate, her hands shaking. "It's okay. It's okay," she whispered, not knowing if the dog could understand but needing to say something. She reached for the first pup, carefully unwrapping the cloth. The tiny body dropped into her arms like a feather. No movement, no sound. Her heart dropped. "No, please no." She cupped the pup gently in her hands, pressing it to her chest. Then the second one. Same silence. She looked down at the mother, who hadn't growled, hadn't moved, only watched, waiting. That look, it wasn't fear. It was trust. A last quiet plea for help. Callie placed the pups on the ground and pressed her fingers against their chests. Nothing. But just as she was about to break, she felt it. A faint flutter. Then a tiny, strained breath. Then another. They were alive. Barely, but alive. "I got you," she said, breathless. "I got you, babies." She looked at the mother. "You did everything you could. You kept them alive." The dog's head dropped, exhausted. Callie knew she had to move quickly. She didn't have supplies, didn't even have water. But she had her arms. She ripped off her jacket, gently bundled the pups inside, and turned to the mother. "I'm going to get you out of here." She knelt beside the rope. The dog flinched when she touched it. The skin underneath was raw and bleeding. Callie pulled out a pocket knife and began cutting. The dog didn't resist. She just watched, blinking slowly, her body trembling. Finally, the rope snapped. The dog didn't move. "Come on, sweetheart," Callie whispered, trying not to cry. "Don't give up now." She stood and backed up slowly, holding the pups close. The mother didn't rise. But then, after a long pause, she shifted. One paw, then another. She tried to stand, wobbled, and nearly collapsed. Callie took a step closer. "You're okay. I'm not leaving without you." The dog let out a low, tired whimper. And then she walked. Slowly, painfully, but she followed. Callie led her out of that place, step by step, past broken fences and weeds, down the dirt path until the old barn was behind them. Every few seconds she looked back to make sure the dog was still coming. And she was, because of them, her babies, her reason. After 20 minutes, Callie saw it, her car, still dead, still useless. But in the passenger seat, there was a blanket, a small water bottle. Enough. She opened the door, placed the pups on the seat, and turned to the mother. "Here, drink." She poured the water into her cupped hand. The dog hesitated, then licked it. One sip, two, more. Callie knelt beside her, stroking her head. "I don't know what you've been through, but I promise you, it ends here. You're not going back." Tears welled in her eyes, because Callie knew what it was like to be left behind. Just a year ago, she'd lost her sister. Car crash. Drunk driver. She hadn't spoken about it in months, hadn't even said her name. But now, kneeling beside this broken dog and her barely breathing pups, something opened in her chest. "You remind me of her," she whispered. "She never gave up either." The wind picked up. The sky darkened. Callie glanced at her phone. No signal. But she had what mattered. She bundled the pups in the blanket, lifted the mother in her arms, light as a shadow, and placed them gently in the back seat. Then she started walking, one foot in front of the other, holding the weight of new life. She didn't know how far town was, didn't know who would help, but she walked anyway, for them, for the ones who couldn't walk on their own yet. Cars passed. No one stopped, until one finally did. An old red pickup. A man in his 60s stepped out, gray beard, oil-stained hands. "You all right, miss?" Callie turned. "I need a vet. Now." He didn't ask questions, just looked at the pups, at the dog, and nodded. "Hop in." The truck smelled of gasoline and hay, but it felt safe, felt warm. As they drove, Callie looked back at the mother. Now resting, eyes shut, her babies nestled against her. She wasn't Mira anymore. She wasn't Daisy. She was something new. She had survived the unthinkable. And this was the beginning of everything she never thought she'd find again. A second chance. The vet clinic smelled like antiseptic and worn leather. It was small, tucked behind a hardware store, with a flickering sign that read Oak Ridge Animal Care. The old man, Sam, as he introduced himself, kicked open the door and shouted, "Emergency! We got newborns and a mama in bad shape." A woman in scrubs rushed from the back. "Bring them in. Fast." Callie cradled the pups in the blanket, her heart pounding. The mother lay limp in Sam's arms, her eyes barely open. But she was still breathing, still holding on. They placed them on a metal table. The pups were wrapped in warm towels, heat lamps turned on, oxygen tubes readied. Callie stood nearby, watching every move with clenched fists and trembling lips. "She's severely malnourished," the vet muttered, placing a stethoscope to the mother's chest. "Rope burns, dehydration, infection risk, but she's a fighter. And these two, they're not out of the woods yet, but they've got a shot." Callie's breath shook. Do they have names?" The vet looked up. "No. Do you want to give them some?" Callie nodded slowly, her voice soft. "The smaller one, let's call him Leo, and the other maybe River." "And the mom?" the vet asked gently. Callie looked at her, scarred, broken, but fierce, a survivor in every way. "Hope," she whispered. "Her name is Hope." Hours passed. Hope was given fluids, cleaned wounds, antibiotics. The pups were fed by hand. Tiny drops of milk, gentle warmth, a heartbeat beside them. They stirred, mewled softly, but Hope remained still. Callie sat beside her, whispering every few minutes, "You're not alone anymore. You don't have to fight by yourself." She couldn't stop thinking about Eli, about how helpless she felt when her sister was taken too soon, about the nights she'd cried alone, wishing someone would save her from that endless ache. Now she knew this was her moment, her turn to be what someone else needed. Late into the night, just as exhaustion was beginning to win, Hope's ear twitched. Callie shot upright, then her paw moved, and finally her eyes opened. She didn't lift her head, but she scanned the room. Her gaze landed on the pups, now bundled together, breathing softly, then on Callie. And that's when it happened. Her tail moved, just once, a slow, tired wag. Callie burst into quiet tears. "You made it," she whispered. "You really made it." The next few days were still hard. Hope needed constant care. The pups cried often. Feeding took patience. But slowly, gently, life returned. Callie slept on the clinic couch. Sam brought food. The vet, Dr. Jensen, checked in hourly. It became a little family of their own, pieced together by fate and a shared desire to heal what the world had broken. One morning, Callie entered the room holding a tiny collar. Hope was sitting up now, legs still weak but eyes brighter than ever. She watched Callie curiously as she knelt beside her. "I don't know what your life looked like before this," Callie said softly, "but I do know this. You're not going back to it." She slipped the collar gently around Hope's neck. It read, "Hope, brave mother, loved." Hope leaned forward and pressed her nose against Callie's palm. Not out of fear, not out of habit, but trust. The pups, now stronger, wobbled across the floor. Leo tripped over his own feet. River barked, tiny, high-pitched. Callie laughed. Hope, watching them, let out a low, soft sound. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a whimper. It was a sigh, of relief, of peace. Days turned into weeks. Callie adopted them all officially, built a small fenced yard behind her cottage, installed a doggy door, repainted the porch. There were toys scattered everywhere, bowls filled to the brim, laughter, barking, life. Hope slept at the foot of her bed. Leo slept curled in her arm. River always found a way under the blanket. It wasn't perfect, but it was full. And every morning, when Callie opened her eyes, she saw them, and remembered that love doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it limps in, scarred and starving, needing everything you didn't know you had to give. But when you choose to love anyway, that's when healing begins. And so, under one roof, the girl who lost her sister and the dog who lost her world found each other. And neither of them would ever be alone again. Healing didn't happen all at once. Some nights, Hope would wake up crying, her body shaking from dreams she couldn't escape. Callie would lie beside her, hand on her back, whispering, "You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore." Sometimes Hope would calm down. Other times, she'd just stare at the door, waiting for something bad that never came. The pups, though stronger, faced their own battles. Leo struggled to eat on his own. River had breathing issues. Every vet visit brought new worry. Callie found herself reading articles at midnight, watching tutorials, doing anything to understand what they needed. Money grew tight. Vet bills, food, supplies, it all added up. Callie took extra shifts at the diner, sold old books, even her mom's sewing machine. But never, not once, did she consider giving them up, because they were her purpose now, her reason to keep going. And slowly the house began to change. River took his first proper steps in the kitchen, slipping on the tiles and sliding into the fridge. Callie laughed so hard she cried. Leo barked for the first time after catching sight of his reflection in the mirror, then ran and hid under the couch. Hope began wagging her tail every time Callie walked through the door. But there were setbacks too. One evening, Leo stopped eating. His little body grew cold. Hope licked him endlessly, trying to wake him. Callie rushed him to the clinic, heart pounding. Dr. Jensen said it was an infection, serious but treatable. Callie didn't sleep that night. She stayed by his crate, hand pressed to his tiny chest, whispering stories, singing softly, telling him about the boy named Eli, and how brave dogs keep going even when it hurts. And in the morning, he opened his eyes. From that day on, things began to shift. Hope started sleeping through the night. Her fur grew back where wounds had once been. River stopped wheezing. Leo found his bark. And Callie? She found herself smiling again. Not the kind you fake, but real ones. The kind that reach your eyes. She wasn't just saving them. They were saving her, too. Every day brought small victories. A clean vet report. A wagging tail. Puppy nap in her lap. With every moment, the past lost its grip. Fear gave way to comfort. Wounds turned into stories of survival. They were no longer broken. They were becoming whole. Together. It was early spring when Callie realized just how far they'd come. The flowers were starting to bloom outside her cottage. Tiny bursts of yellow and pink pushing through the soil. The trees whispered with the breeze. Birds sang above the garden fence. Life, in all its quiet beauty, was beginning again. And so were they. Hope now ran with strength. Her once battered body had filled out, her coat thick and glossy. Her eyes no longer darted around in fear. They glowed with calm, with trust, with peace. Leo had become the mischief maker. He'd steal socks, chase shadows, and bark at his own tail. River, softer in spirit, liked to sit by the window and watch the world pass. They were both full of energy, innocence, and joy, the kind only second chances can give. That morning, as Callie opened the door to let them into the yard, she paused. Hope didn't rush outside like she usually did. Instead, she stood beside Callie, looking up at her with the most gentle expression. Callie knelt down. "What is it, girl?" Hope leaned in and rested her head against Callie's chest. And just like that, Callie began to cry, not because she was sad, but because she finally understood. Hope wasn't just thanking her. She was forgiving the world. All the pain, all the hunger, the rope, the cold nights, the loss. And through that forgiveness, she was finally free. Callie whispered through her tears, "You don't have to carry it anymore. You made it. You're home." The days that followed were quiet, warm, full of routine. Breakfast at sunrise, walks along the creek, lazy afternoons in the sun, laughter in the hallway, barking in the backyard. Callie planted a small tree near the fence line. Underneath it, she buried the frayed rope that once held Hope prisoner. She didn't want to forget. She wanted to honor it, to remember that even from cruelty, love could still rise. One evening, as golden light spilled across the living room floor, Callie sat beside Hope on the couch. River lay curled in her lap. Leo snored in a pile of blankets. "I used to think I was the one rescuing you," Callie whispered. "But the truth is, you rescued me." Hope closed her eyes, content. That night, as the stars blinked awake and the world outside fell quiet, the cottage glowed with something more than light. It glowed with healing, with belonging, with love that had been earned, not given. And that was the most beautiful kind of love there is. There are stories we hear, and then there are stories we feel. This one, it stays with you, because it's not just about a dog, or two helpless puppies, or a girl with a broken heart. It's about what happens when someone chooses love over fear, kindness over silence, and healing over walking away. Hope didn't give up, even when the world turned its back on her. Callie didn't walk away, even when it would have been easier to say, "It's not my problem." And those pups, they remind us that even the smallest lives matter, that even the most fragile things can survive. If someone cares enough, there are more hopes out there, in alleyways, behind gates, in shelters, abandoned fields, shivering under porches, silently waiting for someone to see them. And there are more Callies, too. People like you. People who feel something when they hear a story like this. So don't let that feeling fade. Adopt if you can. Foster if you're able. Donate if you're willing. And if nothing else, share their stories. Help their voices be heard. Because every act of kindness, no matter how small, can be the start of someone's second chance. And second chances, they change everything. Not just for them, but for you too. Stories like this are more than just words. They're reminders of what still matters. Love, loyalty, hope. If you felt that today, subscribe, like, and let's keep spreading what the world so desperately needs.